Hi, my name is Ashish Gadnis, and I'm the co-founder CEO of BanQu, and I'm here live with you guys from Bogota, Colombia. Thank you so much for having me here. So let's start, right? I'm going to break down this conversation into three buckets. One, what is the problem that we are trying to solve? Number two, what is the solution? And then number three, what is the real impact? So let's start something very basic. I grew up in India. I grew up poor. I'm not poor, as you can tell. But I was very, very fortunate to leave India because of software programming. I came to the United States in 1994 with $240, built and sold a couple of startups, and I was very fortunate that in 2012, I sold my last startup. Then I started spending some time in Africa. In 2013 and 2014, I became a volunteer for USAID in the Congo, of all the places, because I had this giant ego on my head because I thought, I was an entrepreneur, I'd sold my startup, I could help solve some substantial problems in the world, which were around extreme poverty, gender equality, and things like that. And so I went to Congo, and I started spending time with local farmers. And my entire ego was completely crushed because the poverty I saw in Congo was very different from the poverty I saw in India. I had to share a bathroom with multiple families in India, but in Congo, there was no bathroom. And that really hit me hard. So I started working with these mama farmers. And at the end of 2014, I got into a fight. Because one of the mama farmers, now women are smarter than men, you already know that. If you disagree, you can jump off this call. But women are smarter than men, and at the end of 2014, this one mama farmer wanted to open a bank account. And I was like, yes, let's do it. So we went to the local bank, and the local bank said no. And it really bothered me because I come from the supply chain industry, and the local bank said, this mother cannot open a bank account because she did not have proof. And I'm like, wait a minute. We, as USAID, we're buying her coffee, we're buying her maize. You're paying $12 for a latte at a coffee shop in New York thinking it's fair trade. It's not, because if the mother's not bankable, how in the world is this fair trade, right? So I got in this argument, and the local bank said, look, I can't bank her, but I'll bank you. So that's where the name comes from. So in case you're wondering what BanQu means, that's what BanQu means. So what's the problem, right? So if you never see me again, remember, there's a very, very, very fundamental flaw in this world today that we look at every day, but we don't want to solve, which is very simple to explain. There are millions and millions of people who live in extreme poverty every day, who grow our coffee, who grow our maize. They're the ones who are mining our cobalt that powers your iPhone battery. These are the same people who are picking up the bottles on the streets of Bogota or the streets of Lusaka that you think is getting recycled. What's the problem? It's very, very easy to explain. And the problem is this, that these millions of people who live in extreme poverty perform the most important job in your supply chain today. Growing your coffee, picking up your bottles, but are invisible. The reason why they're invisible is because they cannot prove their existence in the supply chain. I'm going to go slow again. What's the problem? There are millions of people who live in extreme poverty today who are completely invisible in our supply chain, yet we consume a cup of coffee thinking it's fair trade. We use a bottle saying it's recycled, thinking that it is recycled. Yes, it is recycled, but who is talking about the mama waste picker on the streets of Bogota that picked up your bottle in Zona T, who's completely invisible? And why is that a problem? The reason why that is a problem, guys, is that mother farmer and that mother waste picker cannot prove she exists. If she cannot prove she exists, she is unbankable. If she's unbankable, she's never going to get out of poverty. Because if you're a mama farmer living in poverty that is not bankable, you're not going to get better access to seeds. If you're a waste picker, you're not going to get better access to tools. So the flaw that needs to be solved is that our supply chains need to be traceable, transparent, but most importantly, they have to be equitable. I run a for-profit company, don't get me wrong. I run a for-profit, for-purpose company called BanQu that does something very fundamental, right? Which is we make supply chains traceable, transparent, and equitable. Now, why is that important and why blockchain, right? So this conversation is not about BanQu or what we do. I'm going to now go deeper into the solution. So let's take a step back and get to the basic definition of blockchain. You're not going to hear about cryptocurrency here today. You're not going to hear about Bitcoin. So if you're expecting, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm going to talk about a very fundamental use case of blockchain, which is what? Go back to the mama farmer. When the mama farmer sells her bag of coffee to a coffee broker, what happens in that transaction? That mother gets a paper receipt, if that, especially if she's living in poverty here in Colombia, or she might get some sort of an information, but at the end of the day, she does not own her copy of the supply chain data. If you guys techies, especially all the young guys out there, if you're thinking of a career in supply chain, if you're thinking of a career in technology, ask yourself a fundamental question. If that bag of coffee is moving from the mother to the cooperative, cooperative to the broker, broker to your cup of coffee, it's a 4 or 5 tier supply chain. Who has the data, guys? The mother doesn't. The mother doesn't because her data is sitting in a database that's owned by the coffee company. Her data is sitting in a bank that is giving her a high interest loan, but at the end of the day, she does not own a copy of the supply chain transaction. Let's go deeper because it's critical, right? If I told you walk out the door and you go to a bank, but you cannot prove your education, you cannot prove your work history, you cannot prove your pay stubs, what do you think your experience will be? It'll be horrible. Now put yourself in the shoes of the mama farmer who just sold a bag of coffee here in Colombia that you think is fair trade. But the mother does not have that copy. Now I'm going to give you the explanation of blockchain. The most simple definition of blockchain is that if 2 or more people participate in a transaction, all parties are owed a copy of the transaction. Plain, simple, dumb, easy. Nothing to do with crypto, nothing to do with Bitcoin. And why is this relevant? Why is this relevant to the most fundamental flaws in our global economy, which is gender inequality, extreme poverty, and climate change? Why? Because everybody except the mother can prove her existence. That's why we started BanQu using blockchain, because at a very fundamental level, if the mother is going to sell her bag of coffee, she should be given a copy of her transaction, even though she may not have a smartphone. That's key, and that's the reason why when we started BanQu, we said, let's use blockchain, build an entire supply chain software, because we're geeks, into blockchain, but make sure that that transaction history, which proves the mother's existence in that supply chain, can be delivered to her through an SMS message. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking, wait a minute. So this is a blockchain application. Where's the app? Where's the download? No. If you're a young man or woman, or it doesn't matter younger, anybody listening to this, right? Ask yourself a simple question. If you're that mother on the Zambia-Congo border, do you have the time to download a new app? Do you have the time to refresh your smartphone screen? There's a good chance you probably don't have a smartphone, but you have an SMS phone. So what we did at BanQu took a step back in 2016 when we started, and we said, look, we want to start a for-profit, for-purpose software as a service company that uses blockchain, but in a very fundamental way, which is when a supply chain transaction is triggered, mama, cooperative, transporter, company, or the brand, if all of them are connected to the cloud, software as a service, you guys are techies, then that mother should be able to get a history of what she sold via an SMS message in the local language, right? Sounds foreign, but that's just the reality of people who live in this world in extreme poverty and are making your jeans. They're the ones who are growing your coffee, but they don't have a smartphone. So the solution is very simple to explain. A lot of technology in the back end, and I don't want to bore people with the technology, but I want to go to the simplicity. You have to meet people where they are. So what we do is very basic, which is when the mother comes to sell her bag of coffee, or when the mother comes to sell the bottles, the plastic that she picked up on the streets of Mexico City, I was just there a couple weeks ago, and she sells it at a buyback center, through our blockchain software, she gets an SMS message. Why is that important? As I said, it's not about BanQu, it's not about the technology. It's important because that SMS message now is permanent. That SMS message says, Mama, you sold 40 bottles, 600 pesos, and you exist. That's what I call as the economic passport. This part is key. The economic passport is key because the poorest people in the world who do the hardest work in our supply chains do not have access to their own economic passport, right? So if you forgot everything else in this chat, remember one thing. If you pick up a bag of coffee tomorrow, ask yourself the simple question: does the CEO of the company tell you who the mama farmer is? If you pick up a bottle of your soda, right, beer or whatever it is, ask yourself the question: if the bottle said it's recyclable, does the CEO of the company tell you who was the mama waste picker who picked up the bottle? If the answer is no, then you don't have a supply chain that's sustainable. You don't have a supply chain that's traceable, transparent, and for sure it's not equitable, right? I'm going to stay a little bit on the solution because the solution is key, right? I want people to recognize, especially the young people out there, right, is the future belongs to you. I'm old, as you can tell. The future belongs to you. And if you don't take the choice of making supply chains equitable, you're going to leave a bigger problem for the next generation, right? So go deep and go back to a simple example. Ocean plastic is moving, or bottles are moving in Colombia, right? They move from the waste picker to the buyback center to a transporter to a bottling company that is using it as returnables or recyclables. In that simple example, there's a supply chain that's not tracked and traced. So the opportunity is to connect these missing links, but using a data democracy model. And why do I bring that up? Because we live in data dictatorship, guys. It's just a fact, right? All the money people make is because of other people's data today, right? So the question to ask is that if you really want to make an impact, make money, right? We're a for-profit company. We're live in 51 countries. We're a profitable software company. But we are driven by impact. And my request to you all is be driven by impact, because that bottle not only represents a climate change solution, but it also represents a mother waste picker who is now going to be able to say, I exist through an SMS phone that nobody can deny, right? So now the last part, bringing it all back together. Problem, solution. Why is it so easy? As I said, why is it so easy? Not easy on the technology side, but easy at the human level. Because that mama waste picker, you go talk to the mama waste pickers in Bogota. We rolled it out last year. You go talk to the mama waste pickers in Lusaka or the Coca-Cola informal waste pickers in South Africa. They have an SMS message that will now give them the right to exist. And the benefit to the brand, like the Bavarias, the Coca-Colas, the Islamic Development Bank, all of the companies that use our software, is three things. One, they have a supply chain that is more profitable, because if you know, you're going to be more profitable. Number two, you have a consumer that says, I'm going to buy from you because you are being very honest about your supply chain. And number three is the impact. The impact that you can now make a difference by creating gender equality, reducing extreme poverty, and helping the environment. That's all. Thank you.